Hello my dear friends doctors. If you are watching this video, I know that you are looking some information about this tunneling kit here. This was a project developed together with Ustomed instruments, and on this video here I'm going to bring all the information how you can use and take the most profitable of the new design developed on these instruments. Actually, this was a need. We need to have a different approach on the tunneling surgery, more delicate one, more precise one, and with the current instruments available on the market, that was not kind possible. So we changed a little bit the design of these instruments. We developed completely new design of tunneling instruments in order to really achieve what was needed, what we thought was needed about this super delicate surgery. In this video here, I'm going to bring out the step by step how to use that, every different of these instruments inside this box, and of course in a clinical case, so you can figure out not just how to use this instrument, you can figure out the philosophy of tunneling approach in a general way. Okay, so first of all, let's explain a little bit what is inside this box. So we have here this super nice box developed by Ustomed, and you're going to find here inside 5 different instruments, okay? And you're going to really explain one by one what is the application for every different aspect. For us not to lose much of your time, let's start to talk about this clinical case here. As you can see, we need an approach on the soft tissue margin to change not just the position of the zenith contour, the gingival margin design, but also the color of this gingiva that is super gray in some points. So we're going to need a connective tissue graft here. We're going to need a small core advancement of this margin in order to prepare this patient for the rehabilitation step. Okay, so first instrument that I'm going to talk about, let me check here inside the box. It's a super delicate tunneling instrument. Okay, exactly this one here. You know why I'm going to bring this instrument also on the macro view, don't worry about that. Okay, so this instrument here I'm going to use to start the tunneling step or the tunneling stage. But one thing, before I'm talking about tunneling, when you access the sulcular area, most of the people, they do this step with a blade. They make an incision inside the sulcus. And that is not something that we currently do. Why is that? Because most of our patients, they have a super thin phenotype. You are correcting this super thin phenotype with a connective tissue graft. So most of the case that you are handling is exactly this clinical situation that you have. Using a blade, even using a microblade to execute this step here can compromise the structure of this tissue. An incision inside the sulcus in a circumstance like this one can really make this thin phenotype even thinner. You can make this incision inside the sulcus, take the epithelium from inside, this structure may promoting this structuration of this margin, and sometimes the flap, you lose this flap on the healing stage. So what we do, we avoid that. We try to have detaching the whole flap since the border in the whole structure, preserving the structure. So we do not make an incision anymore inside this area. We promote a detachment with a tunneling instrument. That's why this tunneling instrument is super delicate. If you're going to see here the lateral profile view of this instrument, you see that this instrument is so thin, so delicate that can achieve inside the sulcular area, really detaching the whole structure without cutting that. So it's not necessary and is not advised here for me to use a blade to do this job, okay? So we start bringing this instrument inside the sulcus, and you're going to detach this tissue all around, going to the interproximal area with this very tiny, delicate instrument. In different circumstances, it's going to be the same approach. Just after doing this step with this delicate instrument on the sulcular area, and one important step here, we're not achieving or detaching this tissue in the previous step that I show you guys. We're not detaching the tissue from the bone yet. We're just working on the sulcular area, okay? Second step, what we can do on the second step here, the detachment of the papilla or the papillary area. And for that, we develop a completely new instrument. You can see that this instrument have a very weird curvature. Why is that? Because the detachment of the papilla or detachment of the buccal side of the papilla always was a bottleneck on part on this approach. Always when I was using any regular tunneling instrument to detach this tissue, usually I need to use a lot of stress on the sulcular area to achieve the position of the instrument buccally on the papilla area. And with this curvature of this instrument, you see here is like almost an S shape. The instrument can go inside the sulcus here, very delicate way inside the sulcus, and with the curvature of the instruments, the position of the active part of this instrument can be exactly on the buccal plate of the bone peak, running under the buccal side of the papilla, and you can see even emerging this instrument on the distal margin of the distal tooth here, and detaching the whole shoulder of the papilla, the whole buccal side of the papilla with minimal stress on the sulcular area. So not just you're not stretching the sulcular area, preserving it better, you are applying less pressure on the papilla itself. Some case when you are dealing with a very thin papilla, this pressure, when not done with a proper instrument, can be enough to detach or promote a rupture of this papilla. So this papilla elevator was exactly developed for this proposition, and you're going to see that in the macro view now together with the other instruments. So let's just check and change the camera here for showing the instruments for you guys. So first, let's bring the box closer. Here have a macro camera here for us to check. So let's bring the model. The first instrument I described to you guys was this super nice and small tunneling instrument. Of course, both sides with different curvature, so you can use that in anterior zone or posterior zone very easily, reaching every different spots, okay? The second tunneling instrument that I did not talk about yet was this a little bit larger one. Is basically the same design from the previous one, but this is a little bit larger. Why is that? This is more delicate for maybe starting the sulcular area in all different occasions, and also to do the tunneling on the lateral incisors or lower incisors. In regular size teeth, this tunneling instrument is going to be a little bit faster for us to do the job. I'm going to talk a little more about this instrument in a while, okay? But they have basically the same curvature. The one that we are previously talking about, the papilla elevator, is exactly this instrument here. You see a very weird curvature of this instrument, but this instrument was designed exactly to go inside the sulcular area without stretching the sulcus, and with a small leverage movement I can detach the whole papilla until the next crown. So I can be active here without any stress on the papilla. and the curvature allows me to go both sides, no problem. Or even though if I'm working on the opposite arch and I want to change my hand, this curvature also allows you to use the instrument upside down, and you're going to be as effective as the previous position. So this is going to be a super nice instrument. You're going to love this instrument. It's a unique design, and really there's not anything similar on the marketing. That was a need that we really want to have an instrument to do exactly this movement. That's why we developed this new design. Okay, so this was the Papilla elevator, and let's go here to the clinical view, how to use both instruments. So that was the first tip. Go inside the sulcus, breaking the attachment of the sulcular area, the long junctional epithelium and the connective tissue attachment. I'm going to bring all the tissue together on the flap. That is going to give me a more strong flap during the healing stage. And after that, I can go and bring the Papilla elevator. You see that go inside the sulcus. You see the sulcus not being stretched, completely in his position, and slowly detaching the base of the papilla. Okay, wonderful. Why is that? Because tunneling, one of the great restrictions of the tunneling is how much the tunneling flap can move in coronal direction. And usually the problem is not at the releasing in the apical margin. The problem is exactly the detachment of the papillas itself. If you do not detach the papillas properly, the tissue in the center can move, but the papillas is going to hold this movement of the flap. So to have an instrument to execute this properly is something that we need to have. Okay. What else you have here? Well, that was the regular tunneling instrument. I already showed that on the macro view here, a little larger, and there is some insights about this instrument. First, you see that this instrument is a little bit larger on the sides. Why this instrument is a little bit larger in the side? But first, how to use a tunneling instrument in a very delicate phenotype. When you are doing a tunneling, you are detaching the keratinized attached gingiva, you are detaching this tissue. You, of course, need to move this instrument forward, but you cannot apply a lot of pressure in this forward movement to detach the tissue. Sometimes you hurt the tissue, sometimes with a more sharp instrument you can even perforate the flap. And so when you are moving and detaching the attached gingiva, you apply a small pressure forward, but you move these instruments sideways. Moving the instruments sideways, what you are doing, one lateral side of the instrument, when you move, are really hold on the ground, hold on the bone. The other side, lift a little bit from the ground and lifting the periosteum in a very delicate way in that opposite side. When you move that once again in the opposite movement, this part is going to hold on the ground. This other side of the instrument is going to really move the periosteum, and in this way, in a very delicate way, you are pushing slightly forward, moving the instrument sideways in order to detach very delicate, the most thin phenotype. So when we design this instrument, we design it a little bit larger sideways in order to facilitate and in order to make the detachment of the attached keratinized tissue a little bit faster. Okay, so this is the step that you're going to detach until the mucogingival line. You're going to really move these instruments. Here another clinical case, and you use this instrument to the mucogingival line. You're going to detach exactly to the line 1 millimeter forward. We're not going to detach this flap deeper than the mucogingival line plus 1 millimeter. I'm going to explain that in the sequence here. So the tissue being detached, Okay, then it's going to be the next step. Here I have all this tissue here free already, even the papilla side, everything is completely free. So Ricardo, what I can improve on the flap management? In some cases, I want extra releasing of the papilla base. Some cases, when you have larger papillas, we can even bring a little bit the connective tissue graft under this buccal side of the bone peak. And I need to make this papilla a little bit more free. How to do that? So we develop another instrument that we call that like rabbit foot. Why is that? Because it has exactly the same anatomy of the feet or the foot of the rabbit. So this instrument is going to go inside the sulcular area. Okay, now the idea is to detach this tissue on the top. Okay, you can do that just when the papilla are a little bit larger. You cannot do that in very tiny papilla. So you go inside the sulcus and you rotate this instrument to make it active under the interproximal side, so you can really lift the papilla in the center. Okay, so doing this step, let's just move one more slide here. All the tissue is free for me to start with the blade. Let me just bring once more the macro view here. Why is that? Because I want to show this instrument more closely. Okay, so let's bring once more the macro model here. Okay, proper direction. So one side was the one that I show you. You see here how is the shape. Okay, we're going to bring inside the sulcular area, and we rotated these instruments to go on the interproximal side, lifting the papilla on the interproximal side. Okay, very delicate way. You have in this instrument one side, one tip exactly with this shape, and in the opposite side you have once again like a regular tunneling instrument. Ricardo, why you have this tip here on your instrument? This tip was designed when you need to do a tunneling on the lingual side, especially on the lowers. Why is that? Because the curvature of the instrument make that possible for me to achieve on the lingual side, detaching the tissue. You see a more delicate design, more rounded, not so sharp, because on the lingual side I'm going to need to be a little bit more conservative when I detach the tissue. And to be honest, this single curvature is going to be much better for me to use the instruments on the lingual side comparing to the regular grammature of the previous tunneling instrument that we discussed before. Okay, so let's move once more. We know how to use this instrument. We have detached all the attached gingiva until the mucogingival line. Now is the step that I'm going to need to promote a releasing of this tissue. Okay, and I really believe that from this step on, the releasing of the flap is better, is more cleaner when you do that with a microblade. Okay, so the microblade is going to go inside the flap until the mucogingival line, so until this area here, exactly as I'm pointing here previously. Of course, the instrument is not cutting anything, but from this level down, the instrument is going to need to cut the periosteum. Once I make a horizontal cut of the periosteum, of course, the coronal part of the flap is going to be free from the periosteum attachment, so we can move that more freely. Okay, so here you are seeing the instrument is splitting the tissue below or apical to the mucogingival line. One thing, when you have the mucogingival line here, you are seeing mucogingival line, and the blade is playing apical to this area, you have the mucosa there, you have the muscles, and you have the periosteum that you just had cut the periosteum. So it means that the blade is on the surface of the periosteum or buccally to the periosteum, right? Periosteum is going to be kept on the ground attached to the bone. And you're going to be with this blade on the environment of the muscles, and the surface is the mucosa. A clean work with the blade here is not between the muscles. A clean work with the blade is on the surface of the muscles. Okay, that is very important. I keep repeating myself in every lecture or every small clinical case presentation about this. If you make this incision between the muscles, you're going to have more bleeding. You're going to have a worse post-op for your patient. The releasing, when you bring the flap with some muscles together, is not the same. And of course, if you have some muscles on the flap, on the post-op, the muscle is going to keep moving the flap or can move the flap. If the work of the blade cut the periosteum and goes exactly to the surface of the mucosa, exactly as we are looking here, okay? Completely on the surface. This flap has no muscles on it. When you move this flap without muscles, you're going to have better coronal movement, better releasing, and on the post-op of your patient, more mechanical stability because there's no muscles attached to this area. So that is the one very nice refinement. Here we are using a microblade to do this job. Let me just bring maybe a view without me here so you can clearly see what I write down. And you are using a MGK blade here to deliver this job. Okay, so let's go now for the next step and see what we have here once more. That is the sequence, the instrument number 5 in our kit. What this instrument was developed. Let's bring the macro view here. Okay, this instrument seems like a spatula. Okay, one side with a single curvature and the other side completely opposite curvature. Why this instrument is there for some reasons. We're going to apply this instrument for many different approaches. First and more simple one is when you are doing a detachment of the sulcus on any side of your crown. This instrument that is super sharp on the tipping point, like almost like a blade, allows me to detach the sulcus in very traumatic way and have different curvatures here so I can do this job. When I'm going to do that in a traumatic extraction, you can do an instrument like this one. So I need to do a traumatic extraction going on the sulcus on lingual side, palatal side. This instrument can really deliver the job. That is one of the works this instrument can do. What else? Okay, this instrument also was developed to go on the previous work when you have used the microblade to detach the mucosa from the ground on the muscles. This instrument has a cutting edge, okay? The two-thirds of the instrument is sharp, but this instrument is not sharp here. So you can go with this instrument inside the area and you can really check if the mucosa is completely detached from the muscles below. So it's a little bit sharp. If you have still some fibers attached on the tissue, you can really detach that very fast. Why is that? Because the microblade is super nice, but it's super tiny. When you play a lot with this blade inside the tissue, I still have some fibers connecting the muscles to the flap on the surface. Or if you like to do a modified vista approach, and for me that on tunneling is magical. That is, it's one of the tools I need to handle to do some kind of cases, right? Here we're doing the same job than the previous slide, but I'm doing here a side entrance. So the whole separation from the mucosa, from the muscles, I'm doing here with the same instrument, but a lateral approach. And you see here that the instrument is sharp from here to the tipping point all the contour returning. So all this part is super sharp. I can go from the modified vista approach or modified vista incision, and I can detach the muscles from the mucosa in a very clean way. So this instrument also was developed for this side entrance here. Okay, so once I can really have the whole tissue free, we have used the interproximal papilla tunneling instrument. We have used the buccal papilla detachment, the sulcular detachment, the buccal detachment, and have the mucosa completely free. Look how much I can move freely this flap, even in the papilla area. It's amazing. So, and you're going to see the tissue is completely preserved. You see the tissue is not hurt. There's not much bleeding because of the precision of these instruments. Okay, if you have a very good hand, you have the skills, you need these instruments to tune or to deliver the job. Okay, so that is the idea, just to show the final part of the clinical case. This is our connective tissue graft. We're going to use the connective tissue graft where it's needed, make the really sutures there. Over that, a blue M gel on the post-op care for the patient. You apply that 4 or 5 times a day for the patient. In some cases still use chlorhexidine, but most of the time you are using now for the patient to take care blue M gel, that is oxygen based gel for the patient to take care and keep that clean. Okay, this is the post-op for our patients. Between 10 to 12 days, when you remove the sutures, you see a different position of the soft tissue margin, different color of this area here. So really all the needed, or how the point that we want to achieve for this case already delivered. So I just need to wait a little more longer, deliver back this patient for the dentist that referred this patient to me. But the idea was really to have here in this short clinical case explain for you guys the step-by-step how to use these instruments. I hope you really enjoy this instrument as much I enjoy helping Ustomed to develop these new instruments. Why is that? Because it was a need. We needed these instruments to achieve this kind of precision and to be delicate with the tissue. I think our patients deserve this kind of approach on the daily basis. Okay, thank you so much for watching this video until the end, and if you need any more information, probably going to have during the next months here more clinical case being published using the same instruments. Okay, thank you so much, see you soon.